Jerome. How are you? I'm so happy to have you on our live today.
Hey, it's nice to be here. Thank you for having this conversation with me.
No, thank you. Honestly, this is going to be very interesting. Everyone, this is Jerome Foster II. He is a climate justice activist. He's a Biden White House climate advisor, founder of 1 Million of Us, and a supporter of the Human Race, our climate campaign. Jerome, thank you so much again for joining us. I'm super interested to hear about all of this, but mostly your climate activist journey. Can you walk me through that?
Sure. My climate activism journey is a bit in different areas. I started out really just having a connection with nature and just organizing in my community just from a young age and just understanding how nature functioned. And as I got into high school in ninth grade, I went into virtual reality coding, how the climate crisis impacted communities all across the world. And through that, I went to more traditional activism and organizing, and I first started by with traditional organizing through organizing over 400 of my peers to go out and support the Green New Deal and the Climate Change Education Act. And through
Mm.
that, we held weekly climate strikes over weeks and weeks, and it continued to grow into a movement that we see today. So it's an amazing journey.
I mean, from nothing to this is incredible. How did you galvanize all these people? How did you do that?
It wasn't that it was me that was galvanizing. It was the fact that it was a generation wide call to action. And even when I talk about it today, like I originally was a nerd for quantum physics and computer science, and the only reason why I'm here is because the movement requires people that are willing to organize and bring the urgency out and have a major call to action. And through just talking about the climate crisis, it gave my generation an opportunity to say we are concerned about the climate crisis and we have been for years, but no one's been paying attention. So now it's time for us to go out in the streets and make our voices heard. And that's really why it's been an outpour of over 7 million young people that turn out in the streets to say that climate action is needed right now.
So let me ask you about that because this campaign that we've launched, the Human Race, is I think is really trying to jump on board some of that community outcry and that youth outcry. We want to try and galvanize people through action, which is why we've got the 100 minutes of activity between the 16th and the end of August to then take that motivation and that movement and those signatures to COP26, because obviously COP is coming up and that's where everyone comes together and makes these promises. And I think for us, 100 billion has been promised every year from developed countries to developing countries to help them deal with climate action or climate crisis.
Okay.
That hasn't really come to fruition. So if you could, you're trying to gather people to do the same thing. If you could stand in front of world leaders at COP26, is what my question is trying to be. What would you say?
Yeah, I think that when we talk about the fact that so many countries commit to empty promises and like to say really great words about the climate crisis, it comes down to whether they're actually standing up for communities that are being impacted by their pollution. Because for so many communities that are being impacted today, they are being impacted first and worst, but have polluted the least and have contributed the least to this crisis. And that is incredibly irresponsible and immoral, because countries are now saying that we caused this problem, we're setting your house on fire, and
Mm,
we're not going to give any aid to put the fire out.
mm,
And it's like the entire world is yelling and screaming and saying, are you gonna solve the problem that you started, or are you just gonna sit here and let everyone else burn for the mistakes that you created?
mm,
And if I could have a word at COP26, I would say that the problem now and the mandate that you have is to represent young people that voted you there. And if you don't, you will be voted out. We will not continue to have elected representatives that do not represent an entire generation, and do not represent an entire generation that represent the future. If you go against the future and go against an entire movement of young people, then you're battling against the people that put you there in the first place. And right now, what we're demanding is very fundamental and very basic. It's respect for clean air and clean water, and for communities that you have wronged and continue to exploit. People like to talk about how the climate crisis started with the Industrial Revolution and
Mm,
just by emitting CO2 emissions, but it started with the ideology that limitless extraction and pollution is the right economic model. But
mm.
having an economic model that at its core is reliant upon exploitation of everyday people, then that is a system that has to be fundamentally changed. And for all the elected officials that will be listening at COP26, understand that this is not something that you can just promise away and will away. People are here, we are organizing, we are voting, we are galvanizing our entire communities. And if you continue to neglect the movements that we've created and continue to spew empty talking points that you think sound good, we are here watching, and we're going to continue to watch and continue to demand real and comprehensive climate action that has aspects of equity, that look out for communities that are being impacted and are being burned and are being flooded out of their homes simply for existing. A woman in Sumatra should not have to have her community burned for the luxuries that we have in Europe or in America. That is completely immoral, and elected officials have a responsibility to take action.
That is very well said and extremely inspiring. Two questions to that. What would be the immediate actions world leaders could take, or is it us doing things like movement and all the small movements that we are all trying to take to help reduce climate impact? And secondly, you're working in the White House for Biden as a climate advisor. I would love to hear how that passion that you have is tying into your everyday work. So two questions there.
Yeah, so addressing the first question you asked about what are tangible things governments can do and like the relationship between government and movements. When it comes to the first part of what can governments do, it's first to change how our economic system values fossil fuels over renewable energy. Right now, renewable energy is cheaper than most other forms of fossil fuels. Like if we just install solar panels, we would have cheaper electricity bills, we would have cheaper access to electricity and further democratize access to electrification in communities around the world. But because governments right now are continuing to provide subsidies for the fossil fuel industry, they continue to exist. So my demand and the movement's demand is that they right now stop the production of new pipelines like Nord Stream 2, like Line 3, and like the North Brooklyn pipeline. Second is that we're saying that we must end subsidies in the fossil fuel industry that makes it so that it's commercially competitive. If you give enough handouts to an industry, it then becomes cheaper than the alternative. But if we allowed fair game between between these two energy sources, we clearly see that solar and wind is cheaper and also cleaner for communities. And that's the two demands that we're saying on that front. But also, when we look at the climate crisis, it's threefold. It's about the past, the present, and the future. The future is about stopping future pipelines. But looking at the past and reconciling with the damage that's already been done requires infrastructure investment. And that requires the reconciliation of communities that have already been devastated by the climate crisis. So that means not just giving handouts, but actively taking responsibility for the destruction that's already happened, and giving the money and retribution for the damages that are taking place. So those three things are three things that governments can do right now and should frankly be happening based off of the targets and promises they've already said by meeting a 2030 or 2040 or 2050 deadline. If any of that's ever going to happen, or if that's just empty words, it has to have year over year concrete improvements. So that's what we're looking for, is year by year commitments turned into action. And the second question you talked about, the connection between organizations and movements. I think right now movements are coming to the realization that governments are just not taking us seriously, and they're thinking, oh, they're just going to go in the streets and they're going to go onto another movement.
Yeah.
But what we're seeing now is a massive change over this pandemic, which has come from us having Zoom calls and having inter-movement conversations, saying that the two most powerful forms that we have as a movement is our economic buying power and also our power of our vote. Because elected officials need two things: they need money and they need votes. We may not have the money as of big multinational corporations, but we have the votes. And when we
Mhm.
organize together, we can change that. We can change the nation and change the entire global structure. So that's what has changed there. I'm forgetting your third question. If you could repeat that,
No,
that
that's
would be
okay. I
great.
threw a lot at you. How can you take what you're saying to your job every day at the White House? Are you able to
Mm.
influence?
Yeah. So I serve on the White House Environmental Justice Advisory Council. Working on the Justice 40 initiative, which will work on 40% of executive funds going to frontline communities right now. For example, Flint, Michigan, that needs new pipelines for their water infrastructure, like Miami, Florida, that needs more water pumps to make sure that they aren't flooded out of their communities, and also the Lower Ninth Ward in Louisiana that needs access to rebuilding from Hurricane Katrina, and other examples all across the country. That's one of the things that we initially did when we came together, is not have conversations about what is climate change, what action, what whether it's real or not, but what can we actually do to save our future, and what does that entail in the context of America. So over these past 5 months of being together, we've created the Justice 40 initiative and working on the implementation of it. And second, creating an environmental justice screening tool that allows for communities to be able to request funding for infrastructure projects that will make them resilient from the climate crisis. So we're working on a plethora of things. We're working on various different bills and packages, but it's incredibly encouraging to see the work that's being done within the White House administration to center climate action.
That's really, really, you're right. Absolutely encouraging to hear and very inspiring. I It makes me feel positive to know that people like you are where they need to be in the White House as such, but also on the streets, doing really concrete things. So yeah, I think that's I'm smiling to myself because I'm hoping that the human race, with our almost 500,000 Strava challenged signer uppers who should be moving soon, can have the same impact. I'm hoping that you're going to do the 100 minutes, and wondering if you had any messages for those that have signed up, to keep them going or to encourage more signups. What would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say to everyone who's doing the challenge or just starting out, definitely keep going and celebrate the small wins. Like every day when you're organizing your community, like we say, hope comes from the collective action of community, and it comes from everyday action that translates into system change. And for movements, the thing that we do is we try to change the system overall. But as activists and as individuals, we have an immense power to change how our culture is and how the culture of the people that are around us. And this Strava challenge does that. It does that by changing how you think about the world and challenging your preconceptions and saying, I'm gonna change this about how I do my daily actions and make it more environmentally friendly. So it's exciting to see the people that are doing it now, and
Mm.
definitely keep on going and keep on pushing as you progress through the challenge, because it is so important that even as we talk about system change, we have to have a culture of sustainability when in our everyday lives as well.
And we exactly have to have hope, right? And it's small changes, and it's so important that people understand that small changes, because it's so easy for our negative bias to take over and think, well, what's the point? Or it's too big. But just as you've said, and just as you've proven in your climate career already, small changes every day can create huge impact, like the butterfly effect. So I am totally with you that 100 minutes is a lot, but also not at the same time. But if everyone's at least challenging their preconceptions, having conversations about climate, having conversations about whether or not this is worth it, is it good, what's happening at COP, those are the things that need to be talked about. Because without that, we don't even know that things need to change. So, I mean, spot on with that message. Really, thank you so much. That's yeah, great,
Definitely. And if
absolutely
anyone
great.
has any questions about like what is the difference between system change and individual change, it's like both and. It's not just like only doing individual action and not focusing on like joining an organization. It's whatever you can do, everything you can do. The movement needs you, so just be a part
Do
of it,
it.
and let's see climate action take place. So yeah.
Oh, Jerome, that is an amazing conversation. Thank you so much for your time. I am
Thank you.
super happy to have you where you are. This is there's hope for us yet. So thank you. Keep doing your good work, and yeah, let's both do our 100 minutes because I haven't done mine yet either. So there we go. Thank you.
Thank you. Have an amazing day.
You too. Bye.